Satsuki Yamato reflects on the various hobbies people have, noting that he prefers spending his lunch breaks on the school rooftop. While there, he catches sight of Kyoraji Aisu, who is quietly eating her meal alone, unaware of his presence as she enjoys her food. As Satsuki Yamato observes the scene, he realizes that the girl sitting alone on the rooftop is none other than Kyoraji Aisu. Caught in the moment, Aisu looks up, visibly startled by his presence. Satsuki Yamato stares at her with such focus that Kyoraji Aisu is visibly flustered. She stammers in a panic, wondering if he caught a glimpse of her hidden teeth while she was eating. Kyoraji Aisu is clearly rattled by the encounter. As she tries to process the situation, her hand slips while holding her chopsticks, and she nervously asks Satsuki Yamato if he caught a glimpse of her secret. Satsuki Yamato walks toward the bench where Kyoraji Aisu is sitting. As he approaches, he calls out to her, his presence causing her to jolt in surprise. He seems ready to ask her about the secret she is so desperate to hide. Satsuki Yamato stares intently at Kyoraji Aisu, his internal monologue fixated on the unusual, razor-sharp nature of her teeth. As he observes her closely, he finds himself captivated by the unique feature she has been trying so hard to hide. Caught off guard by Satsuki Yamato's blunt observation, Kyoraji Aisu freezes in place. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, Kyoraji Aisu covers her face and pleads with Satsuki Yamato to stop looking at her. Unfazed by her reaction, Satsuki Yamato remains calm and openly admits that he actually finds her sharp, shark-like teeth to be quite appealing. Satsuki Yamato keeps his gaze locked on Kyoraji Aisu, his words hanging in the air as he admits that her shark-like teeth are only part of what has captured his attention, leaving her stunned. Standing on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato beams with excitement as he tells Kyoraji Aisu exactly how he feels. He isn't repulsed by her secret. Instead, he finds her jagged teeth to be genuinely charming and cute, catching a completely stunned Kyoraji Aisu off guard with his bold and positive declaration. The school bell rings, signaling the end of the break, but Satsuki Yamato is not giving up. He sits on the bench next to Kyoraji Aisu, pressing his hands together in a desperate, pleading gesture, begging her to hurry up and eat. Kyoraji Aisu, clearly annoyed by his daily antics, gives a cold humph and bluntly tells him there is not a chance in hell she will comply. Kyoraji Aisu watches Satsuki Yamato with a mix of curiosity and reluctance, wondering what he is up to. Satsuki Yamato brushes off her cold rejection with a laugh, excitedly announcing that he has brought a secret weapon to the rooftop today. Satsuki Yamato plays his trump card, slamming a rare cheese melt curry bread, a limited item from the school shop, in front of Kyoraji Aisu. The sight of the bread immediately breaks through Kyoraji Aisu's cold exterior, leaving her stunned and completely hooked. Satsuki Yamato watches with a smug grin, satisfied that his bait has worked perfectly to capture her interest. Satsuki Yamato continues to taunt Kyoraji Aisu with the limited edition bread, acting smug and playful. He admits that he went as far as buying information from Amiya to secure the item, while Kyoraji Aisu stares at him, clearly struggling to resist the temptation. Satsuki Yamato resorts to ultimate begging, clapping his hands together and pleading with Kyoraji Aisu to let him watch her eat the limited edition bread. Aisu, clearly annoyed and calling him gross, shifts the conversation to a more serious note, asking if he has revealed her secret about her shark-like teeth to anyone else. Yamato dismisses the concern, insisting he would never do such a thing, while internally acknowledging that he knows she prefers to eat alone despite having friends. Kyoraji Aisu slowly begins to slip her mask down, her hand trembling slightly. Satsuki Yamato watches her with intense focus, admitting that while he understands she has a lot on her mind, he simply cannot contain his desire to see her teeth. As Kyoraji Aisu finally lowers her mask, her sharp, shark-like teeth are revealed to Satsuki Yamato. Overwhelmed by the sight, Satsuki Yamato finds himself completely transfixed, questioning if he has stumbled into paradise. Kyoraji Aisu, looking at him with a mix of vulnerability and intensity, warns him that he better not tell a soul about her secret, or else. On the school rooftop, the tension of the secret reveal gives way to Kyoraji Aisu's hunger. She impatiently demands the limited edition cheese melt curry bread from Satsuki Yamato, who, still slightly dazed by the sight of her shark-like teeth, awkwardly agrees to hand it over. Kyoraji Aisu takes a large, satisfying bite of the cheese melt curry bread. The sound of the crunch echoes as she reacts with a blissful, overwhelmed expression, fully enjoying the taste of the limited edition treat. Kyoraji Aisu is lost in the joy of eating the rare bread, her face glowing with happiness. Watching her from nearby, Satsuki Yamato is struck by how adorable she looks in this moment. He calls out to her, unable to contain his admiration as he tells her that she is looking incredibly cute. Flustered by Satsuki Yamato's sudden praise, Kyoraji Aisu stares at him, calling him an idiot while trying to maintain her composure. Satsuki Yamato, however, is completely unfazed and continues to gush over how cute she looks, finding the combination of her bashful expression and unique shark teeth to be absolutely perfect. As they share this intimate moment on the rooftop, the story marks the start of their evolving connection. Satsuki Yamato observes Kuraraji Aisu as she eats, reflecting on how everyone has their own specific interests that they are passionate about. Meanwhile, Kuraraji Aisu is completely focused on her meal, delighting in the octopus sausage with a genuine smile. On the school rooftop, Kuraraji Aisu is busy eating while Satsuki Yamato watches her with a persistent, happy grin. Feeling the weight of his gaze, Kuraraji Aisu glares at him and tells him not to stare so much, calling him a creep. Undeterred, Satsuki Yamato openly admits that he loves her shark teeth, causing Kuraraji Aisu to react with a startled, flustered outburst. As the series moves into its second chapter, the focus remains on the evolving connection between Satsuki Yamato and Kuraraji Aisu. With the theme of youth being described as jagged and razor-sharp, the stage is set for more intimate and quirky moments between the two. Overwhelmed by the intimate moment, Satsuki Yamato flops onto the bench, completely ecstatic to hear the natural sounds of Kuraraji Aisu eating without her mask. Kuraraji Aisu, watching him from the other bench, is left stunned and flustered, struggling to process his dramatic emotional outburst while she continues her meal. While sitting on the rooftop, Kuraraji Aisu finally confronts Satsuki Yamato about his habit of joining her every day. She asks him directly if he lacks other friends to spend his lunch break with. Satsuki Yamato, still lounging nearby, simply replies with a casual "yeah" as he continues to watch her. Satsuki Yamato beams with a bright, carefree smile as he admits to Kuraraji Aisu that he has absolutely no friends to eat lunch with. Kuraraji Aisu, unfazed by his confession, simply continues eating her meal and remarks that he is pretty gross, while Satsuki Yamato remains completely unbothered by her blunt assessment. Kuraraji Aisu looks directly at Satsuki Yamato, her expression calm as she mentions having brought something for him today. Satsuki Yamato, clearly surprised by her sudden change in demeanor, can only gulp and ask what it is, wondering if it might be something sweet. Kuraraji Aisu proudly reveals the snack she brought, holding up a rice cracker with a cheerful "ta-da" to surprise Satsuki Yamato. After presenting the rice cracker, Kuraraji Aisu stares at Satsuki Yamato with a flat, unimpressed expression. She remarks on his lack of enthusiasm, clearly expecting a more vibrant reaction to her gesture. Satsuki Yamato playfully challenges Kuraraji Aisu on whether a rice cracker truly counts as a dessert. Despite his initial hesitation, he decides to accept the snack. Meanwhile, Kuraraji Aisu continues to eat, her sharp, shark-like teeth visible as she takes a bite, creating a light-hearted moment between the two on the rooftop. Kuraraji Aisu takes a firm bite of the rice cracker, the loud crunching sound filling the air as she continues to eat, her sharp teeth visible while she focuses on the snack. As Kuraraji Aisu continues to crunch on her rice cracker, the sound triggers an intense and dramatic reaction from Satsuki Yamato, who rides on the bench in a state of sensory overload. Kuraraji Aisu, unimpressed by his bizarre behavior, tells him to stop being stupid and to quit freaking her out, all while she keeps eating. Kuraraji Aisu sits on the bench, casually finishing her rice cracker with a blank expression. Beside her, Satsuki Yamato is visibly trembling, his body shaking with intense, overwhelming emotion as he watches her every move. Kuraraji Aisu keeps eating her rice cracker, unfazed by the spectacle she is creating. Satsuki Yamato, still reeling from the sight of her sharp teeth in action, can't help but marvel at the sheer destructive power of her snack time. Kuraraji Aisu calls him a moron for his dramatic reaction, while Satsuki Yamato lets out a laugh, finding her bluntness and her unique way of eating to be completely endearing. Amused by Satsuki Yamato's dramatic reaction to her snacking, Kuraraji Aisu lets out a bright, uninhibited laugh. Her expression is joyful and unguarded, showcasing her sharp teeth as she finds his behavior genuinely funny. Kuraraji Aisu lets out a bright, genuine laugh, her signature shark-like teeth fully visible in a wide grin. She seems completely at ease and is clearly enjoying the light-hearted interaction with Satsuki Yamato. Satsuki Yamato is left in a state of dramatic, overwhelmed excitement, sprawled out on the bench while Kuraraji Aisu remains composed. She takes another bite of her snack, the crunch echoing as she playfully calls him a dumbass and asks if he wants another cracker tomorrow, marking a sweet and humorous end to their rooftop encounter. The rooftop remains a quiet sanctuary for the pair. Kuraraji Aisu focuses intently on finishing her snack, her rhythmic chewing filling the silence. Beside her, Satsuki Yamato watches with a wide, genuine grin, his expression reflecting his complete fascination with her presence. On the school rooftop, Kuraraji Aisu breaks the silence by pointing out that Satsuki Yamato has been consistently watching her eat lunch lately. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard but remaining relaxed, simply responds with a curious "hm" as Kuraraji Aisu continues to express her thoughts on his persistent presence, admitting that she has grown used to his company. Satsuki Yamato beams with a wide, energetic smile, flashing a thumbs up as he enthusiastically tells Kuraraji Aisu that her observation is great, maintaining his carefree and curious attitude. Kiraraji Aisu stares at Satsuki Yamato with a mix of disbelief and annoyance. She can't help but question his strange, overly optimistic attitude, bluntly calling him an idiot for his cheerful demeanor. The narrative shifts to a new chapter, focusing on Kiraraji Aisu. In this intimate portrait, she is captured mid-meal, her sharp teeth visible as she eats in her own distinct way, setting the tone for a deeper exploration of her true self. The conversation on the rooftop takes a turn as Kiraraji Aisu points out that she hasn't seen Satsuki Yamato eat lunch since the day he discovered her secret. Satsuki Yamato seems caught off guard by the sudden shift and focus toward him. Kiraraji Aisu presses him for an explanation, but Satsuki Yamato remains relaxed, insisting that she shouldn't worry about him and should simply focus on enjoying her own meal. Kiraraji Aisu gives Satsuki Yamato an ultimatum, demanding he explain himself or lose the privilege of feeding her. Satsuki Yamato reacts with immediate, comical panic, desperate to avoid such a consequence. Facing the pressure from Kiraraji Aisu, Satsuki Yamato hesitates before revealing the truth behind his behavior. He confesses that he has been spending all of his lunch money to provide food for her, which is why he hasn't been eating anything himself. Kiraraji Aisu is completely taken aback by Satsuki Yamato's self-sacrificing behavior. Her reaction is a mix of shock and anger, as she cannot fathom why he would be so foolish as to spend his own lunch money on her instead of eating himself. Satsuki Yamato takes a moment to compose himself before presenting his lunch to Kiraraji Aisu. He slides the meal toward her, emphasizing that the chopsticks are still split and the food is untouched, urging her to go ahead and eat despite the awkward tension. Despite Satsuki Yamato's insistence that his lunch is clean and ready to eat, Kiraraji Aisu politely declines the offer. She admits that she finds joy in watching him eat with such enthusiasm and does not want to interfere with his meal, leaving Satsuki Yamato momentarily stunned by her genuine sentiment. Kiraraji Aisu loses her cool, flapping her arms in frustration and calling Satsuki Yamato names for his stubbornness. She desperately wants him to eat, but Satsuki Yamato calmly brushes off her concerns, insisting that he is perfectly fine and doesn't need to share his food. Satsuki Yamato looks directly at Kiraraji Aisu with a sincere expression, finally proposing a compromise to their standoff by suggesting that they could simply eat together. Kiraraji Aisu looks directly at Satsuki Yamato, her expression shifting as she admits that she would find it much easier and more fun to eat if he joined her for the meal. On the school rooftop, Kiraraji Aisu tries to hide her embarrassment after agreeing to eat with Satsuki Yamato, scolding him for making her say something so lame. Satsuki Yamato quickly apologizes, and as he prepares his chopsticks to finally share the meal, he begins to contemplate his next steps in their relationship. While Kiraraji Aisu enjoys her meal on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato watches her closely. He reflects on the rarity of the moment, realizing that the rooftop during lunch is the only place where he can see Kiraraji Aisu without her mask. Satsuki Yamato finds himself pondering the different sides of Kiraraji Aisu. While he is used to seeing her alone or with him, he begins to wonder what she is like during class or when she is laughing and chatting with her friends, curious about the version of her that exists outside of their quiet rooftop lunches. As Satsuki Yamato continues to contemplate Kiraraji Aisu's life outside of their private rooftop moments, his fascination grows. He finds himself fixated on the mystery of her appearance, specifically wondering what her unique shark-like teeth look like while she is still wearing her mask in class or among her friends. While sharing a quiet meal on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato suddenly stops eating and turns his full attention to Kiraraji Aisu. With a serious expression, he tells her that he has made a decision. As Kiraraji Aisu looks at him, puzzled and wondering what he means, Satsuki Yamato leans in and tells her that he wants her to show him something, finally acting on his desire to see her true self. Satsuki Yamato leans in, his expression intense as he urges Kiraraji Aisu to live without her mask. He confesses his desire to see every side of her, leaving Kiraraji Aisu completely shocked and speechless as she stares back at him. Caught off guard by Satsuki Yamato's earnest request, Kiraraji Aisu immediately shuts down the idea, her face filled with shock as she exclaims that such a thing is impossible. The sudden rejection hits Satsuki Yamato hard, leaving him slumped over in a state of gloom and despair on the rooftop. Satsuki Yamato looks down, trying to find the right words to justify his bold request to Kiraraji Aisu. He gestures slightly, attempting to explain his feelings, while Kiraraji Aisu watches him from across the rooftop, still processing the sudden intensity of his proposal. Kiraraji Aisu softens her stance slightly, admitting to Satsuki Yamato that she does not dislike their time together. While Satsuki Yamato feels a sense of relief at her words, he remains troubled by her persistent refusal to drop her mask, sensing that something deep within her makes her believe that hiding is the only way she can exist. Kiraraji Aisu looks at Satsuki Yamato with a gentle, genuine smile that reveals her sharp, shark-like teeth. Breaking her usual guarded demeanor, she responds to his persistence by acknowledging that she wants to do something about their current situation. The scene settles on the lunchbox left on the rooftop. Satsuki Yamato remains fixated on the memory of Kyoraji Aisu's smile, his mind swirling with the weight of her words and the melancholy he sensed beneath her expression. This moment marks a significant step forward from their usual, guarded routine. Satsuki Yamato stares fixedly at Kyoraji Aisu, his expression serious and unwavering. He breaks the tension by calling out to her, asking a question while Kyoraji Aisu remains looking down, clearly feeling the weight of his attention. Kyoraji Aisu glances away, her expression flustered and guarded as Satsuki Yamato continues his inquiry about the guy hanging around, leaving the atmosphere thick with tension. Satsuki Yamato remains crouched beside Kyoraji Aisu's desk, focused on his conversation with her. Suddenly, a red-haired classmate stands up at a nearby desk, looking down at the group with an annoyed and puzzled expression, loudly asking who Satsuki Yamato is. Caught off guard by the sudden intrusion, Satsuki Yamato raises his hands in a defensive gesture, telling the others to ignore him and continue their conversation. He makes it clear that his sole focus is on Kyoraji Aisu, who looks visibly annoyed by the entire situation. Satsuki Yamato's nonchalant attitude continues to irritate the group. As Lumi and Tia react with shock and annoyance at his bluntness, Kyoraji Aisu finally loses her patience. She tells him off, and the group collectively drives him out of the classroom, with Kyoraji Aisu calling him an idiot as he is ushered out the door. Standing alone in the hallway after being kicked out, Satsuki Yamato remains unfazed by the commotion. Despite the rejection from Kyoraji Aisu and the others, he stares ahead with a stubborn expression, silently vowing that he is not giving up on his goal. Just as Satsuki Yamato is left standing alone in the hallway, a new, cheerful blonde girl approaches him. With a playful giggle, she catches his attention and asks him to step aside with her for a moment, claiming she has something she wants to talk about. The scene shifts to a colorful promotional illustration featuring Rin and Kyoraji Aisu posing together. The text highlights the series' core theme, celebrating the charming and mischievous nature of the characters while emphasizing the central romantic comedy focus on Kyoraji Aisu's unique shark-like teeth. Standing in the hallway after his recent rejection, Satsuki Yamato is approached by a girl who introduces herself as Mamiya. She giggles, teasing him about being kicked out of class, and beckons him to follow her. Satsuki is left wondering what Mamiya could possibly want to talk about, but he reluctantly agrees to follow her lead. As they stand in the hallway, Mamiya cuts straight to the point, asking Satsuki Yamato why he has been spending so much time trailing after Kyoraji Aisu lately. Her playful yet pointed question leaves him standing there, forced to address his intentions. Satsuki Yamato looks visibly struck by Mamiya's direct inquiry. His expression shifts to one of guarded realization as he mutters to himself, confirming his suspicions that there is more to the situation than meets the eye. Mamiya Shizuku introduces herself to Satsuki Yamato, confirming her close friendship with Kyoraji Aisu. Satsuki Yamato realizes that Mamiya is the same person he had previously asked about Aisu's favorite foods. Mamiya playfully teases him, admitting that she couldn't help but get curious about his motives, leaving Satsuki Yamato feeling caught off guard. Satsuki Yamato scratches his head, visibly anxious as he tries to deflect Mamiya Shizuku's curiosity. He internally debates how to handle the situation, knowing he cannot simply disclose the secret about Kyoraji Aisu's mask, especially since he has never seen her reveal her true face to her own friends. Caught deep in his thoughts about Kyoraji Aisu, Satsuki Yamato is suddenly interrupted when Mamiya Shizuka points out his intense frown. The unexpected observation startles him, and he lets out a flustered reaction, momentarily losing his composure in front of her. Satsuki Yamato takes a leap of faith and asks Nico if she has ever seen what lies beneath Kyoraji Aisu's mask. The question catches Mamiya off guard, causing her to freeze in place. She quickly recovers, giving Satsuki Yamato a sharp, incredulous look as she dismisses the possibility entirely, calling him stupid for even suggesting it. Satsuki Yamato scratches his head, feeling slightly embarrassed by his own question. He realizes that Mamiya truly has no knowledge of what lies beneath Kyoraji Aisu's mask, confirming that her secret remains well guarded even from her closest friends. Satsuki Yamato recoils in panic, fearing he has offended Nico with his prying questions. Mamiya, however, remains composed and slightly teasing, pointing out the obvious fact that Kyoraji Aisu has a specific reason for keeping her mask on, even during social activities like karaoke. Nico continues to explain Kyoraji Aisu's habits to Satsuki Yamato, pointing out that even when they go out for karaoke together, Kyoraji Aisu remains firm about keeping her mask on, never taking it off to eat or drink in front of them. Nico looks at Satsuki Yamato with a serious expression, telling him to stop his behavior. She bluntly calls him out, suggesting that if he has been following Kyoraji Aisu around just to see what is under her mask, he needs to quit it immediately. Satsuki Yamato stands stunned, realizing that Nico has perfectly called him out on his true intentions. He cannot find the words to defend himself, as he knows she is right. Deep in thought, he contemplates his own feelings, wondering if his fascination with Kuraraji Aisu is truly as simple as just wanting to see what is hidden behind her mask. Standing in the school hallway, Nico cuts straight to the point, asking Satsuki Yamato if his interest in Kuraraji Aisu is actually because he likes her. The question catches Satsuki Yamato completely off guard, leaving him frozen in silence as he processes her direct accusation. Satsuki Yamato's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as Nico hits the nail on the head. Stunned by her bluntness, he can only shout in surprise, realizing that his secret feelings have been laid bare. Caught off guard by Nico's blunt question, Satsuki Yamato stammers in a panic, trying to deny his feelings. As he struggles to find the right words, his imagination takes over, and he becomes lost in a daydream featuring the sharp, shark-like teeth of Kuraraji Aisu, leaving him momentarily distracted and unable to form a coherent response. Miko looks at Satsuki Yamato with a knowing, slightly teasing expression, warning him that his pursuit of Kuraraji Aisu is going to get him hurt. Satsuki Yamato, still caught in his own thoughts and clearly rattled by the confrontation, can only stammer out a hesitant and uncertain response, unsure of how to process his own emotions. Satsuki Yamato finds himself completely charmed by Kuraraji Aisu. He thinks about how, even when she tries to act tough or tell him off, she only ends up appearing cute to him. He acknowledges that she is inherently kind, recalling moments where she shared her food with him, and he remains deeply impressed by her character. As Satsuki Yamato continues to process his feelings, Nico cuts through his thoughts with a blunt warning, telling him that Kuraraji Aisu is simply out of his league. Stunned by her cold assessment, Satsuki Yamato awkwardly tries to back away from the topic, telling her to never mind what he said. Nico clarifies that she didn't intend to shut him down so harshly, adding that it is not her place to tell him who he should or should not like. Satsuki Yamato, completely caught off guard by her sudden change in tone, is left reeling with a racing heart, unable to process her words as his internal monologue spirals into a frantic panic. Nico gazes at Satsuki Yamato with a calm, serene smile. Her previous intensity has faded, replaced by a quiet, knowing look that seems to acknowledge the complexity of his feelings. Caught off guard by Nico's sudden shift in tone, Satsuki Yamato stares at her, visibly flustered and concerned, asking if something is wrong. Nico quickly dismisses his worry with a nervous, playful laugh, telling him to forget about it, though she adds that it will be easier said than done. Nico seems to be steeling herself for a difficult confession or piece of advice. Her hand tightly grips her clothing, a clear sign of her internal tension as she begins to speak to Satsuki Yamato with a hesitant, uncertain tone. Nico stands before Satsuki Yamato, her hesitation finally giving way to a serious confession. She admits that there is something specific about Kuraraji Aisu that has been weighing on her mind. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard by the gravity of her tone, immediately presses her for clarification, wondering exactly what she means by that. As the conversation with Nico lingers in the air, the focus turns to Kuraraji Aisu herself. With her mask firmly in place and her eyes meeting the viewers, the story deepens the intrigue surrounding her hidden shark teeth and the secret she keeps from the world. Satsuki Yamato stands in stunned silence, his mind racing as he processes the cryptic and concerning information Nico just revealed about Kuraraji Aisu. The gravity of the situation settles in, leaving him visibly shaken and struggling to find the right words to respond. Satsuki Yamato feels hesitant about hearing Nico's secret, trying to steer the conversation away. However, Nico ignores his discomfort and begins to share a personal anecdote, revealing that Kuraraji Aisu had a moment of intense panic while they were walking home together recently. Nico continues to recount the incident to Satsuki Yamato, explaining that while she and Kuraraji Aisu were walking home, they encountered a group of boys from another school heading in their direction. Nico continues her recount, explaining that while running into students from another school is normally no big deal, Kuraraji Aisu suddenly acted out of character. As the boys approached, Kuraraji Aisu immediately went to hide, leaving Nico puzzled and calling out to her friend in confusion. Nico continues her story, describing the encounter with the group of boys. As she recalls the scene, Kuraraji Aisu's eyes are shown wide with tension and fear, clearly unsettled by the presence of these strangers. Nico questions if Kuraraji Aisu knows them, noting how strange her reaction was. Nico continues to recount the incident, her hand clenching in frustration as she explains to Satsuki Yamato that she tried to ask Kuraraji Aisu about her strange behavior, but Aisu dismissed it as nothing. Nico remains unconvinced, insisting that it was clearly something important. Satsuki Yamato looks troubled as he considers the situation. He realizes that Kuraraji Aisu's dismissive attitude is a major obstacle, and he feels hesitant to keep pressing her for answers, suspecting that she is intentionally hiding something from him. Satsuki Yamato stands facing Kuraraji Aisu in the empty school corridor. He struggles to find the right words to explain why he asked to meet her, his voice trailing off as he contemplates his next move. Nico smiles confidently at Satsuki Yamato, telling him that he possesses a unique ability to connect with Kiraraji Aisu that she lacks. Yamato is taken aback, pointing to himself in disbelief. Nico explains that she has never seen Isis socialize with any other boys, prompting Yamato to question if that is truly the case, though he remains insecure, worrying that his persistent efforts are only annoying her. Nico firmly tells Satsuki Yamato that Kiraraji Aisu does not seem bothered by his presence at all. Yamato, still filled with self-doubt, questions her assessment, imagining Kiraraji Aisu calling him an idiot or a dumbass. Nico continues to encourage him, suggesting that while Kiraraji Aisu might find it difficult to open up to others, she might be different with him. Yamato, however, feels conflicted and guilty, worrying that he is merely taking advantage of his own feelings for her. Satsuki Yamato looks on with a serious and determined expression. He admits that if there is anything he can possibly do to support Kiraraji Aisu, he is fully committed to doing it. Nico laughs softly, calling herself out for being a class act by taking a bribe to leak information about Kiraraji Aisu. She admits to Satsuki Yamato that she is too scared to do anything herself, forcing him to do her dirty work simply because he likes Aisu. She then sighs, wondering aloud if she is just bothering Aisu as well. Nico looks intensely at Satsuki Yamato, cutting through his self-deprecating worries with a direct and reassuring statement, insisting that he is definitely not a nuisance to Kiraraji Aisu. Nico continues to reassure Satsuki Yamato, explaining that he is asking for her help because some topics are difficult for friends to bring up directly. She insists that his concern for Kiraraji Aisu is completely normal and nothing to be ashamed of. Though she adds a self-deprecating comment about not having friends of her own, she firmly tells Satsuki Yamato that Kiraraji Aisu would not be bothered by a friend who genuinely cares about her. Nico lets out a playful giggle as she observes Satsuki Yamato. She tells him that he seems harmless enough and admits that she no longer minds him following Kiraraji Aisu around like a lost puppy. As Nico continues to analyze his behavior, she remarks that he has been giving off a harmless vibe all along. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard by her direct observation, can only respond with a hesitant and awkward expression of thanks. Having finished sharing her thoughts, Nico lightheartedly suggests that they head back to class. Satsuki Yamato, however, decides he needs a moment to process everything and tells her to go on ahead without him. Nico waves goodbye as she departs, leaving Satsuki Yamato alone in the hallway to contemplate. Satsuki Yamato calls out Mamiya to get Nico's attention just as she is about to walk away, prompting her to pause. Nico stops and turns back to look at Satsuki Yamato with a gentle, knowing smile. She tells him that he does not need to feel awkward when speaking to her. Satsuki Yamato, looking surprised and slightly taken aback, listens as she adds that since they are not friends yet, he should tell her more about himself the next time they talk. Nico giggles and tells Satsuki Yamato that she will think about his suggestion to open up more. With a cheerful wave, she walks away, calling out a final goodbye. Satsuki Yamato watches her leave, left alone in the quiet hallway to process their interaction. Satsuki Yamato remains on the rooftop, lost in thought as he debates the best way to interact with Kiraraji Aisu. He questions whether he should bring up sensitive topics or ask to walk home with her, fearing her rejection. After a moment of internal deliberation, he decides on a plan and firmly resolves to move forward. The school bell rings, signaling the end of the period. Satsuki Yamato stands still in the hallway, lost in his own thoughts, which causes a group of nearby students to stop and stare at him in confusion, wondering what he is doing. Satsuki Yamato keeps a sharp eye on the school gate, quickly spotting Kiraraji Aisu as she walks out alongside Nico and their group of friends. Feeling a surge of determination, he decides it is finally time to put his plan into motion. With a swift movement, he dashes toward her, calling out her name to get her attention. Satsuki Yamato makes a sudden, clumsy entrance, stepping right in front of Kiraraji Aisu and her blonde classmate. As he apologizes for the intrusion, the girls are visibly taken aback, with Aisu stammering in surprise. Yamato, acting on his impulsive plan, fumbles with his bag, creating an awkward yet determined atmosphere as he finally confronts her. Satsuki Yamato suddenly grabs Kiraraji Aisu's bag and dashes away, creating a loud thumping sound as he retreats. Kiraraji Aisu is left stunned, shouting at him to return her belongings, while Miko watches the scene unfold in total confusion, unable to comprehend what just happened. As Satsuki Yamato dashes away with her bag, he yells out desperately, demanding that Kiraraji Aisu stop and listen to him. After his impulsive chase, Satsuki Yamato stops and hands the bag back to Kiraraji Aisu with a casual apology. Aisu, caught off guard, instinctively thanks him before immediately snapping back to her senses, realizing how absurd the situation is. She stares at him with wide, shocked eyes, demanding to know what he is thinking. Despite the confusion of the previous moment, Satsuki Yamato remains focused on his goal. He stands before a visibly startled Kiraraji Aisu, finally finding the opening he needs to speak to her. As two boys linger in the background, Satsuki Yamato calmly tells her that there is something important he wants to ask her. Satsuki Yamato suddenly grabs Kiraraji Aisu and tugs her into a more private area, urgently telling her to get over there before they are spotted by others. A startled Kiraraji Aisu asks what he is doing, but quickly hushes him, clearly flustered by the unexpected situation. Satsuki Yamato holds Kiraraji Aisu back in the shadows of a corner to avoid detection. Nearby, two boys are caught in a conversation, with one of them casually confirming he saw Aisu. The other boy expresses disbelief, prompting his friend to describe Aisu's appearance with crude comparisons, specifically mentioning her sharp, dinosaur-like teeth, while Aisu and Yamato remain forced to listen to the insensitive remarks. The cruel words from the nearby boys weigh heavily on Kiraraji Aisu. Feeling exposed and vulnerable, she reaches out and tightly grips the fabric of Satsuki Yamato's hoodie. Satsuki Yamato stands still, aware of her distress as she clings to him in the shadows. The atmosphere turns sour as the boys continue their insensitive remarks about Kiraraji Aisu. Satsuki Yamato remains nearby, his expression hardening as he hears them mention her name with mockery. Meanwhile, Kiraraji Aisu, still hiding in the shadows, is visibly distressed, her eyes wide with hurt as the secret she has worked so hard to protect becomes the subject of ridicule. The group of boys continues to gossip loudly, showing no restraint as they ridicule Kiraraji Aisu. One of them laughs mockingly, questioning if anyone could feel sorry for a girl with such unusual teeth. Hidden just out of sight, Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu are subjected to the full weight of their heartless comments. Satsuki Yamato watches the boys with a sharp, cold gaze. He realizes that this specific boy is the one driving the mockery, and despite knowing he might not be the sole reason Kiraraji Aisu wears her mask, Satsuki Yamato feels an intense, instinctive urge to confront him for his behavior. Satsuki Yamato listens intently to the boys' cruel remarks, confirming his suspicion that they are the source of the rumors surrounding Kiraraji Aisu. Beside him, Kiraraji Aisu remains hidden and shaken, her hand tightly gripping his hoodie as the hurtful words echo nearby, deepening her insecurity. The hurtful words from the nearby students continue to weigh heavily on Kiraraji Aisu. Visibly distressed and unable to ignore the mockery, she reaches out and gives Satsuki Yamato's hoodie a sharp tug, her silent plea for support reflecting her deep vulnerability in this painful moment. Kiraraji Aisu's expression is one of pure distress, her eyes welling up as the weight of the mockery bears down on her. Satsuki Yamato, witnessing her pain, focuses his attention entirely on her, his eyes reflecting a mix of concern and growing resolve as he stands by her side. The atmosphere turns heavy and dark, reflecting the internal realization of Satsuki Yamato. Amidst the void, he acknowledges the painful truth he has just uncovered, muttering to himself that he had expected as much all along. Kiraraji Aisu is captured in a quiet, contemplative moment. The atmosphere feels intimate and slightly melancholic, emphasizing the weight of the secrets she keeps hidden behind her mask. The text overlays frame her character, setting the stage for the chapter titled, "Show Me Your Shark Teeth." Satsuki Yamato firmly stops Kiraraji Aisu, urging her not to leave their hiding spot. Kiraraji Aisu is visibly startled, her eyes wide with anxiety as she desperately pleads for him to keep her hidden from the group of boys who are still laughing and talking just a few steps away. Kiraraji Aisu stops in her tracks, her dark eyes reflecting a mix of anxiety and hesitation as she looks towards Satsuki Yamato. She begins to speak, her voice trailing off as she struggles to articulate her feelings while they remain concealed from the others. Satsuki Yamato looks down at Kiraraji Aisu with a serious, intense expression. Sensing her anxiety and the potential for a confrontation, he speaks firmly, questioning her intentions before telling her to stay quiet and not do anything that might reveal their location. As Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu attempt to remain undetected, one of the boys nearby is suddenly struck by a sense of disbelief, his eyes widening as he blurts out a sharp, confused exclamation. While Satsuki Yamato keeps Kiraraji Aisu shielded from view, the group of boys continues their conversation nearby. One of them expresses confusion about not finding who they were looking for, while another boy notices the pair and sarcastically tells them to get a room, completely unaware of the tension in the situation. Satsuki Yamato seethes with internal anger, thinking about how Kiraraji Aisu is left petrified while the boys continue to mock them. His hand twitches in frustration. Suddenly, the boys get closer, causing a startled reaction. Satsuki Yamato quickly tugs Kiraraji Aisu deeper into the shadows to keep her hidden as the boys continue their search. Satsuki Yamato holds Kiraraji Aisu close, his expression hardening as he watches one of the boys from the group, standing just a short distance away. The tension remains high as they wait for the search to end, with Satsuki Yamato refusing to let his guard down. Satsuki Yamato leans against the wall, keeping his protective stance until he is certain the intruders have departed. He turns to Kiraraji Aisu, who is still huddled close, and softly tells her that they are gone. Kiraraji Aisu lets out a small, relieved sound, finally relaxing her posture as she looks up at him and offers a quiet, sincere thank you for his help. Satsuki Yamato keeps his composure, speaking directly to Kiraraji Aisu to ensure she stays calm now that the immediate danger has passed. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu walk side by side along the sidewalk, the tension of the previous encounter still lingering. As they move, Satsuki Yamato glances at her, clearly bothered by her silence, and finally blurts out a question, shocked that she isn't curious about what just happened. Satsuki Yamato insists that he isn't stupid and understands the boundaries of when to ask questions, though he admits to himself that the situation has become awkward. Kiraraji Aisu, observing his reaction, calmly notes that he clearly still wants to know the truth. Kiraraji Aisu stands quietly, her gaze fixed on Satsuki Yamato. The tension between them begins to dissipate as she processes his words, her silence speaking volumes in a quiet moment. Satsuki Yamato suddenly breaks down into a fit of frantic face rubbing, letting out strained noises. Kiraraji Aisu watches him, clearly worried, and tells him to stop before he scrubs his face off. She remains silent for a moment, observing his strange behavior with a mix of confusion and care. Satsuki Yamato stops scrubbing his face and turns slightly, finally deciding to share the truth with Kiraraji Aisu. He explains that the boy in the middle of the group they just avoided was actually a classmate of his back in grade school. Satsuki Yamato continues his story, recalling how the boy from his past would relentlessly tease him, calling his teeth weird and comparing him to a dinosaur. He describes how the boy would label him as creepy or gross, often inciting others to laugh along with him. As he speaks, Kiraraji Aisu is visibly shaken, struggling to understand why he is laughing while recounting such a hurtful experience. As Satsuki Yamato listens, Kiraraji Aisu opens up about her past. She explains that she couldn't bear the cruel comments about her appearance, which led her to start wearing a mask. She admits that while her family was one thing, her primary motivation was to hide her teeth from everyone else in the world. Satsuki Yamato gently probes further into Kiraraji Aisu's insecurities, asking if her need to wear a mask to hide her teeth also applies to her close friends, such as Mamiya. Kiraraji Aisu confirms that she trusts her friends, specifically mentioning Miko, believing they would be accepting of her teeth. Despite her deep-seated fear of judgment, she begins to acknowledge that her friends might not react with the same cruelty she has experienced in the past. Kiraraji Aisu looks directly at Satsuki Yamato with wide, anxious eyes. Overwhelmed by the weight of her insecurities and the trauma of her past experiences, she admits her true feelings, confessing that she is scared. Kiraraji Aisu stands motionless, her feet planted on the ground as her mind races with conflicting thoughts. She tries to convince herself that her friends would never judge her, yet the traumatic memory of past mockery makes her terrified of the possibility that it could happen again. The sound of her accessories jingling punctuates her heavy, lingering hesitation. Kiraraji Aisu looks down, her expression filled with vulnerability. Despite her deep-seated anxiety about her appearance, she reminds herself of the trust she has in her friends, whispering that they are, after all, her friends. Satsuki Yamato internalizes the gravity of Kiraraji Aisu's confession, concluding that her deep-seated fear of being judged stems from a specific individual in her past. The realization hits him hard. Breaking the tension, he admits to Kiraraji Aisu that he was listening intently, though he jokingly remarks that her serious, intense expression earlier made him think she was about to start a fight. Kiraraji Aisu is taken aback by Satsuki Yamato's sudden display of maturity, noting that it is a far cry from the doofus he usually acts like. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard by her observation, panics for a moment, wondering if he came on too strong. Kiraraji Aisu admits to her own perceived shortcomings, calling herself a doofus and a dope as well, to which Satsuki Yamato laughs and lightheartedly agrees, easing the tension between them. Satsuki Yamato watches with a relieved expression as Kiraraji Aisu breaks into a giggle. Seeing her laugh, he exclaims with genuine excitement that he managed to make her smile, effectively breaking the tension that had been weighing on them. Satsuki Yamato looks at Kiraraji Aisu with a mix of surprise and sincerity, asking if she was truly affected by how worked up he got over her situation. Kiraraji Aisu, wearing her mask, responds with a quiet, steady admission that she was indeed angry, noting that anyone in his position would have felt the same way. As the conversation deepens, Kiraraji Aisu pauses to gather her thoughts, signaling that she is about to be completely honest with Satsuki Yamato regarding the sensitive topic they were discussing. Kiraraji Aisu looks at Satsuki Yamato with a soft, vulnerable expression, admitting that his anger on her behalf made her feel happy. Satsuki Yamato responds by gently insisting that her friends, including Mamiya, would have been just as upset for her sake, further validating her feelings and helping her feel less isolated. As they walk together, Kiraraji Aisu pauses to express her genuine surprise at Satsuki Yamato's reaction. She admits that she never imagined there would be a guy who would get so angry for her sake, while Satsuki Yamato looks on, deeply affected by her confession. Moved by Satsuki Yamato's unexpected display of protectiveness, Kiraraji Aisu softens her expression. With a warm, genuine smile, she looks at him and softly says, "Thanks." As they reach a point in their walk, Kiraraji Aisu turns to Satsuki Yamato to thank him for accompanying her, insisting that she can manage the rest of the distance on her own. She waves goodbye, and Satsuki Yamato, slightly flustered but composed, replies with a simple farewell, watching her walk away as he tells her to take care. Kiraraji Aisu turns to wave goodbye to Satsuki Yamato, her posture light and cheerful. Though her face remains hidden behind her mask, she is beaming with a wide, shark-toothed grin, clearly touched by their conversation. Satsuki Yamato watches her go, left with the lingering thought that he missed seeing her genuine smile. Satsuki Yamato turns away and begins walking down the road alone. The sound of his footsteps, marked by the rhythmic tapping on the pavement, fills the quiet atmosphere as he heads home, reflecting on the meaningful conversation he just shared. While Satsuki Yamato continues his walk home, the scene lingers on Kiraraji Aisu. She looks visibly dejected, her eyes reflecting a sense of sadness as she gazes downward. Kiraraji Aisu looks visibly distressed, her expression heavy with thoughts she cannot share with anyone else. As she walks away, the rhythmic sound of her footsteps echoes, highlighting her solitary and somber mood. The narrative lingers on Kiraraji Aisu, revealing a soft, sincere smile hidden behind her mask. This quiet moment captures the genuine happiness she feels, contrasting with her earlier troubled appearance as she continues on her way. Kiraraji Aisu walks alone, her footsteps echoing with a heavy thought. She contemplates a life where she could be herself, laughing and eating with friends without the burden of a mask, a freedom stolen from her by a cruel remark about her teeth. The heavy, rhythmic thumping of footsteps echoes as Kiraraji Aisu keeps walking, lost in the weight of her memories. The sound serves as a constant reminder of the burden she carries, trailing off with a lingering sense of uncertainty. Satsuki Yamato pauses, his expression shifting into one of genuine contemplation. He mutters to himself, acknowledging a feeling of warmth and acceptance, finding comfort in the current state of his relationship with Kiraraji Aisu. Satsuki Yamato contemplates the depth of Kiraraji Aisu's emotions, realizing that her smile, while genuine, carries a lingering sadness that speaks to the pain she has endured while hiding her true self. Driven by a sudden surge of emotion and the weight of his thoughts about Kiraraji Aisu, Satsuki Yamato takes off at full speed. He climbs the stairs, his mind racing as he firmly rejects the idea that her situation is acceptable. Satsuki Yamato stops moving, his legs trembling slightly from the intensity of his sprint. He stands in the middle of the street, gasping for air, his breath coming in ragged, heavy bursts as he attempts to steady himself. Satsuki Yamato stands in the alleyway, still reeling from his emotional realization, when he comes across Milo, who are engaged in a lively, loud conversation. Their boisterous laughter fills the space, contrasting sharply with the heavy, contemplative mood Satsuki Yamato has been carrying. The heavy silence of the alley is broken when Milo calls out to Satsuki Yamato. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Satsuki Yamato looks up, his expression shifting from exhaustion to confusion as he realizes he is not alone. Caught off guard while trying to recover from his run, Satsuki Yamato turns his gaze toward the voice that interrupted him. He offers a hesitant, breathless response to the stranger standing in the alleyway. The narrative transitions to a new chapter, capturing a quiet, intimate moment with Kiraraji Aisu. As she gazes at her phone, a caption reflects on her ability to remain unmistakably herself, even during these simple, easygoing moments. Satsuki Yamato stands his ground in the alleyway as Milo looms over him, his expression tense and demanding. Milo cuts through the air with a sharp command, insisting that Satsuki Yamato owes an apology to Kiraraji Aisu, leaving the atmosphere heavy with confrontation. Satsuki Yamato struggles to keep his cool as Milo continues his aggressive confrontation. As he processes the situation, a sudden realization hits him. The girl Milo is demanding an apology for is none other than Kiraraji Aisu, the same girl he had a previous encounter with. The tension rises as Yamato connects the dots, his frustration mounting at the stranger's baseless hostility. The tension in the alleyway spikes as Milo suddenly reaches out and firmly grips Satsuki Yamato's shoulder. Caught off guard by the physical confrontation, Satsuki Yamato lets out a brief, confused sound of surprise. Milo glares intensely at Satsuki Yamato, his expression twisted in anger as he issues a sharp, threatening command to keep Kiraraji Aisu's name out of his mouth. Satsuki Yamato stands his ground, demanding to know why he should apologize and telling Milo to make sense. Despite the physical discomfort from Milo's grip, Satsuki Yamato firmly tells him to let go, while Milo remains fixated on his demand for an apology. Milo presses his demand, insisting that Satsuki Yamato apologize for making fun of Kiraraji Aisu's unique teeth. Satsuki Yamato, however, refuses to back down, nonchalantly claiming he was only stating the truth about her sharp teeth, further fueling the tension between them. As Satsuki Yamato continues to comment on the nature of Kiraraji Aisu's teeth, Milo loses his temper and bellows at him to shut the hell up, silencing his remarks immediately. Ignoring Milo's aggressive demands, Satsuki Yamato shouts back with intense passion, insisting that Kuraragi Ice's teeth are the most adorable in the world. Milo, clearly enraged by Satsuki Yamato's refusal to back down, warns him never to speak of her that way again. Satsuki Yamato forcefully pulls away from Milo, telling him to stop yelling and let go. He then calmly suggests that since Milo would likely only upset Kuraragi Ice further by approaching her directly, he should write his apology down on paper instead, offering to deliver it to her himself. Satsuki Yamato takes the initiative to prepare a makeshift piece of paper, using scissors to trim a handout so that Milo can write his apology letter to Kuraragi Isu. The confrontation in the alleyway intensifies as a bag is suddenly thrown, marked by a loud wham. Satsuki Yamato remains composed, facing Milo and his group, while the atmosphere grows increasingly volatile. Milo remains completely unimpressed by Satsuki Yamato's attempt to mediate the situation. He scoffs at the idea of writing an apology, calling Satsuki Yamato's behavior weird and insisting that he has no intention of apologizing for anything, regardless of how Satsuki Yamato feels about Kuraragi Iso. Milo's expression twitches with visible frustration as he stares down Satsuki Yamato. He dismisses the entire interaction with a cold, final insult, telling him to stop and calling him a freak as he prepares to walk away. Satsuki Yamato stands firm, challenging Milo to acknowledge the pain he caused. He points out that Milo's grade school heckling is the reason Kuraragi Isu feels the need to wear a mask, even when she is around her friends like Rin. As the conversation unfolds, a flashback reveals a quiet moment between Kuraragi Isu and Rin, emphasizing the emotional distance Kuraragi Isu maintains. Milo continues to belittle the situation, finding it absurd that Kuraragi Isu still hides behind a mask. He laughs dismissively, claiming they were just kids back then and that she should have moved on by now. He expresses his annoyance at Satsuki Yamato for confronting him over what he considers to be a trivial matter from the past. Furious at Milo's callous dismissal of his past actions, Satsuki Yamato grabs him by the collar. He shouts that the bullying was not nothing and insists that the pain inflicted on Kuraragi Isu is something that stays with a person, refusing to let Milo walk away from his responsibility. Satsuki Yamato refuses to back down, his voice filled with conviction as he describes how the pain from childhood bullying acts like a wedge, embedding itself deep within a person's soul and refusing to fade away, no matter how much time passes. The narrative flashes back to a memory of a young boy, his face twisted into a cruel, mocking grin as he shouts out a malicious comment, emphasizing the lasting sting of such childhood cruelty. Satsuki Yamato stares down his opponent with a look of pure indignation. He rejects the idea that the bullying was just a childhood phase, his voice cutting through the tension as he accuses Milo of still harboring the same malicious sneer that caused Kuraragi Isu so much pain. Satsuki Yamato stares down Milo with a piercing, aggressive intensity that catches the bully off guard. As Milo stammers in shock, questioning Satsuki Yamato's reaction to his laughter, the tension in the alleyway reaches a breaking point. Satsuki Yamato refuses to back down, his frustration boiling over as he forces Milo to the ground. He aggressively calls out Milo for his dismissive attitude and demands that he apologize for the cruelty behind his laughter. Satsuki Yamato looms over Milo, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Milo, clearly just wanting to end the confrontation, tosses out a dismissive and insincere apology for the physical altercation, demanding that Satsuki Yamato apologize in return. Satsuki Yamato stares intensely, his expression hardening as he dismisses Milo's attempt to brush off the conflict. He makes it clear that his own feelings are secondary, forcefully demanding that Milo apologize to Kuraragi Isu for his past actions. Satsuki Yamato snaps, delivering a forceful kick toward Milo while shouting for him to shut up. Milo, held back by his friends, remains defiant and continues to mock Kuraragi Ice's appearance, questioning why Satsuki Yamato is so fixated on defending her. Despite Milo's desperate pleas for him to calm down, Satsuki Yamato remains locked in his intense, confrontational stance. He brushes off the noise and frustration, focusing entirely on his core motivation. He simply wants Kuraragi Isu to be able to enjoy her time at school without being subjected to cruel mockery. The scene shifts as Satsuki Yamato reflects on a past memory. He recalls waking up after sleeping too long in the infirmary and spotting Kuraragi Isu in the classroom after school, a moment that preceded their routine of eating lunch together on the roof. Deep in his memories, Satsuki Yamato reflects on that quiet day in the classroom. He vividly remembers seeing Kuraragi Isu standing by the window, looking incredibly small and isolated as she held her mask in her hand. Although he didn't see her face at that moment, the image of her solitude left a lasting impression on him, and from that day forward, his thoughts began to drift toward her constantly. Satsuki Yamato narrates his past attempts to connect with Kuraragi Isu, explaining how he would search the school during lunch breaks, hoping to find her alone. As he walks through the hallways, he realizes she is not in the classroom, eventually leading him to a moment where he finally tracks her down, even as he considers heading to the roof to eat. Continuing his flashback, Satsuki Yamato remembers the quiet scene on the school rooftop. He recalls seeing Kiraraji Aisu sitting all by herself, eating her lunch in the solitude of the empty space. The sight of her alone in that moment struck him deeply, marking a pivotal point in his growing fascination with her. As Satsuki Yamato continues his recollection, he focuses on the image of Kiraraji Aisu eating her lunch in silence. The sight of her, isolated and quiet on the rooftop, leaves a lasting impression on him, highlighting just how lonely she appeared in that specific moment. The flashback ends as Satsuki Yamato snaps back to the tense confrontation. He stares down Milo, refusing to back down despite the group's hostility. With a sharp, determined look, he insists that his desire to see Kiraraji Aisu smile without her mask is his own business, making it clear that he will not be intimidated. The tension between Satsuki Yamato and the others is suddenly broken when a voice rings out, calling his name. Satsuki Yamato turns his gaze toward the source, his expression intense and focused. Satsuki Yamato's intense confrontation is abruptly halted when Kiraraji Aisu herself steps into view. Her sudden presence catches him off guard, leaving him stunned as he stares at her, unable to finish his sentence. Satsuki Yamato sits on the ground, looking up in complete shock as Kiraraji Aisu appears before him. He stammers, asking her what she is doing in such a place, clearly unsettled by her unexpected arrival while he was in the middle of defending her. Kiraraji Aisu steps into the scene, her expression firm as she tells Satsuki Yamato that she told him not to do this. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard by her sudden intervention, looks at her with a mix of surprise and concern as the sound of footsteps echoes in the alley. Kiraraji Aisu stares down at Satsuki Yamato, her eyes filled with a complex blend of worry and irritation. She softly calls him an idiot, clearly frustrated that he put himself in harm's way for her sake. Standing before Satsuki Yamato, Kiraraji Aisu finally decides to drop her guard. With her back turned to him, she speaks with a mix of resignation and vulnerability, asking if he truly wants to see her secret. She prepares to reveal her shark teeth, signaling a major shift in her willingness to be open with him. The tension in the alleyway escalates as the group of boys continues their harassment. They jeer at Satsuki Yamato, who remains on the ground, before shifting their aggressive focus toward Kiraraji Aisu. With a mocking tone, they demand that she take off her mask, completely disregarding the tense atmosphere surrounding them. Satsuki Yamato's patience finally reaches its limit. With a sharp, piercing gaze, he stares down the bullies and snaps at them, demanding they shut up and stop their harassment. The tension in the alleyway shifts as Kiraraji Aisu moves closer to Satsuki Yamato. With a soft, deliberate motion, she reaches out and touches his cheek, her hand lingering there as the noise of the bullies fades into the background. Satsuki Yamato looks at her, visibly affected by her sudden display of affection. The tension of the confrontation fades into a moment of quiet intimacy as Kiraraji Aisu gently touches Satsuki Yamato's face. Her eyes widen with concern when she notices a trickle of blood from his nose, asking if he is hurt. Flustered by her proximity and care, Satsuki Yamato stammers in response, caught off guard by her unexpected tenderness. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu try to move past the confrontation, but the bullies block their path. One of the bullies persists in his harassment, shouting at them not to ignore him and reiterating his demand to see Kiraraji Aisu's teeth, forcing the pair to stop in their tracks. Kiraraji Aisu turns back toward the bullies, her expression cold and unwavering. With a menacing look, she silences them, firmly telling them that she already told them to shut up, leaving Satsuki Yamato stunned by her sudden display of assertiveness. The tension in the alleyway escalates as the bullies mock Satsuki Yamato for acting tough. Kiraraji Aisu tries to pull him away, whispering for him to ignore their taunts. However, the bullies refuse to back down, shouting demands for her to show her shark-like teeth, leaving the pair in a difficult standoff. The tension in the alleyway escalates as one of the bullies, Milo, relentlessly mocks Kiraraji Aisu, shouting at her to show off her freaky choppers. Despite the aggressive taunting, another voice in the group attempts to de-escalate the situation, telling his companions that it is enough. As the bullies continue their verbal assault, Kiraraji Aisu decides she has had enough. She firmly grabs Satsuki Yamato and pulls him away from the group, leaving the bullies behind as they continue to shout provocations at them. Fed up with the constant harassment and the bullies' aggressive demands, Kiraraji Aisu makes a bold decision. She reaches up and pulls down her mask, revealing her unique, shark-like teeth to the stunned group, effectively silencing their mockery with her sudden display of defiance. The alleyway atmosphere turns tense as the bullies react to Kiraraji Aisu's exposed teeth with cruel taunts, comparing them to razors. While one bully tries to de-escalate, the others continue to jeer, leaving Satsuki Yamato to watch over Kiraraji Aisu as she stands firm against their insults. Despite the aggressive mockery from the group, Kiraraji Aisu maintains her composure. She calmly says sorry, a response that seems to momentarily disrupt the bully's momentum, leading one of them to awkwardly ask for her name. The atmosphere in the alleyway shifts as the bullies lose their confidence. One of them nervously tries to downplay their earlier aggression, claiming they were just talking nonsense and hadn't actually seen anything. As he stammers, trying to recall what was said, Satsuki Yamato watches them with a sharp, unimpressed gaze, while Kiraraji Aisu remains standing calmly by his side, her presence effectively silencing their mockery. The bully, visibly sweating and flustered, tries to backtrack by bringing up Satsuki Yamato's genuine praise for Kiraraji Aisu's teeth. He stammers, attempting to distance himself from his own earlier mockery while realizing how foolish he sounds. The tension in the alleyway shifts as the bullies begin to lose their nerve. One of them remarks that Kiraraji Aisu's teeth aren't nearly as weird as their friend had claimed, prompting him to tell his companion to calm down. Despite the initial mockery, the group is clearly unsettled, and one of the boys insists that they should just leave the situation behind. As the bullies continue their aggressive posturing, Satsuki Yamato intervenes, telling them to stop yelling and pointing out that Kiraraji Aisu is not looking for a fight. His expression turns cold and serious as he looks directly at them, recalling the hurtful labels they used in the past, making it clear he hasn't forgotten their cruelty. Satsuki Yamato remains firm in his confrontation, recounting the past insults he endured from the bullies. Meanwhile, Kiraraji Aisu quietly adjusts her mask, her expression hidden as she listens to Satsuki Yamato stand up for her. Kiraraji Aisu stares down the bullies with an intimidating, sharp-toothed expression, coolly asking them for their names. The sudden shift in her demeanor catches the bullies off guard, while Satsuki Yamato watches the tense interaction unfold, seeing Kiraraji Aisu take control of the situation. The atmosphere settles into a brief moment of silence, with the focus resting on a solitary school bag sitting on a desk in the empty classroom, marking a pause in the ongoing drama. The bullies retreat, with one of them still loudly protesting and demanding to be remembered, but Satsuki Yamato pays them no mind. He realizes that their past insults no longer hold any weight over him. In the quiet aftermath, Satsuki Yamato stands beside Kiraraji Aisu, the tension dissipating as he looks toward her, his perspective on the world having shifted. Satsuki Yamato stands before Kiraraji Aisu, bowing deeply as he expresses his sincere regret. He feels responsible for the situation, apologizing for taking matters into his own hands and inadvertently causing Kiraraji Aisu to remove her mask in front of others. Kiraraji Aisu looks at Satsuki Yamato, noting that he didn't fight back and is now a mess. Satsuki Yamato responds sheepishly, explaining that he avoided a physical altercation because he was worried it would only upset her more, concluding that hitting the bully wouldn't have solved anything anyway. As Satsuki Yamato stands there looking flustered and confused, Kiraraji Aisu grabs the sleeve of his hoodie and lets out a giggle. She teases him, calling his previous words surprisingly wise for an idiot, which leaves Satsuki Yamato bewildered as he wonders what exactly she found so funny. The tension of the confrontation finally breaks as Kiraraji Aisu lets out a boisterous, uncontrollable laugh. Satsuki Yamato stands frozen beside her, looking utterly confused and taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor, as she admits that the whole situation was simply insane. Satsuki Yamato looks at Kiraraji Aisu with a flushed, worried expression, struggling to understand her sudden shift in demeanor. Kiraraji Aisu, still visibly affected by the confrontation, explains that she is shaking like a leaf, lashing out at Satsuki Yamato for assuming she would be perfectly fine after facing such a traumatic memory. Kiraraji Aisu pulls her mask back into place, her hands gripping the fabric as she processes the emotional intensity of the moment. She looks towards Satsuki Yamato, noting that despite her initial fear, facing her past trauma turned out to be more manageable than she had anticipated. Satsuki Yamato watches her, impressed by her resilience and growth. Kiraraji Aisu looks on with a faint, gentle smile, dismissing Satsuki Yamato's theory about her growth. Her calm demeanor leaves Satsuki Yamato momentarily surprised as he processes her response. Standing in the quiet alleyway, Kiraraji Aisu looks up at Satsuki Yamato with a sincere expression. She gently clarifies that her newfound strength didn't come from simply growing up, but rather from the comfort of having him by her side, leaving Satsuki Yamato visibly moved by her admission. Flustered by Kiraraji Aisu's directness, Satsuki Yamato stammers, trying to play off his own emotional reaction. Kiraraji Aisu remains calm, explaining that she only knew where to find him because Nico had called her, mentioning that he was running around looking upset. She admits that she simply had a feeling and decided to come search for him herself. Satsuki Yamato looks at Kiraraji Aisu with a pained, apologetic expression, feeling responsible for the injury she sustained during the recent conflict. He sincerely tells her how sorry he is that she got hurt on his account, but Kiraraji Aisu immediately brushes off his concern, telling him to never mind that. Satsuki Yamato continues to blame himself for the injuries Kiraraji Aisu sustained during the fight, feeling responsible because she stepped in on his behalf. Kiraraji Isa brushes off his concerns, insisting that it was her own choice to intervene. As Satsuki Yamato remains visibly flustered and conflicted, Kiraraji Isa leans in, whispering a final, soft remark that leaves him momentarily speechless. Satsuki Yamato tries to lighten the mood, telling Kiraraji Isu that the guys who caused trouble shouldn't be a concern anymore, as they seem to get the message. He then earnestly promises her that if any further trouble arises, she should call him, and he will come flying to help her, a gesture that leaves them both in a slightly awkward but sweet moment. Satsuki Yamato, clearly flustered and blushing, tries to articulate his feelings, stammering through his words. Kiraraji Isu watches him with a calm, curious expression, gently prompting him to continue. Satsuki Yamato nervously flaps his jacket to cool off, desperately trying to make small talk about the heat to ease the awkwardness. However, he quickly realizes the mood has shifted and begins to panic internally as Kiraraji Isu stares directly at him with wide, unwavering eyes, leaving him completely bewildered by her sudden change in demeanor. Satsuki Yamato is visibly caught off guard, his face flushed with confusion and nerves. As he stammers in disbelief, Kiraraji Isu calmly reaches up to touch her mast, signaling a shift in the moment that leaves Satsuki Yamato utterly bewildered. Satsuki Yamato is visibly overwhelmed, his face flushed with embarrassment as he reacts to Kiraraji Isu's direct question about his past compliment. Kiraraji Isu, while adjusting her mask, shyly admits that he did indeed call her teeth the most adorable in the world, deepening the romantic tension between them. Kiraraji Isu looks away, her voice filled with hesitation as she apologizes to Satsuki Yamato, worried that her unique teeth might actually be off-putting to him. The atmosphere is heavy with her lingering insecurity, her heart pounding as she waits for his reaction. Kiraraji Isu remains vulnerable, questioning how Satsuki Yamato could possibly find her teeth cute when she has been told the opposite by others in the past. She struggles to reconcile his kindness with her own long-held insecurities. Satsuki Yamato can't hold back his feelings, passionately arguing against Kiraraji Isu's self-deprecating view. He exclaims that her teeth are the most adorable thing, frustrated that she would ever think otherwise, and emphasizes that she deserves to be told she is cute just like any other girl. Kiraraji Isu looks at Satsuki Yamato, her expression softening as she suggests that if he continues to tell her that her teeth are cute, it might eventually erase the painful memories of the cruel things that guy said to her. Kiraraji Isu continues to speak, her shark-like teeth visible as she muses on the potential impact of Satsuki Yamato's constant encouragement on her self-esteem. With a radiant and unmasked smile, Kiraraji Isu looks at Satsuki Yamato, her eyes filled with newfound confidence. She confesses that, thanks to his constant support and kindness, she is finally starting to accept, and even like her own teeth. With a genuine, open smile, Kiraraji Isu shows off her razor-sharp teeth. Satsuki Yamato, responding with a clear grin, enthusiastically promises to tell her she is cute every single day, every single second, though he quickly adds a playful, self-deprecating correction that maybe he won't do it every single second. In that quiet alley, it is just the two of them, lost in their growing bond. Satsuki Yamato stands alone in the quiet alley, still lingering on the warmth of Kiraraji Isu's smile. However, the atmosphere shifts abruptly as he catches sight of an unexpected figure nearby, causing him to pause and question who else might be there with them. Just as Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Isu were enjoying their intimate conversation, the atmosphere shifts instantly. A mysterious male student suddenly appears, catching them off guard by addressing her as Isu. The identity of this newcomer remains unknown, leaving Satsuki Yamato and the reader to wonder who this person is and why he is approaching her. The mysterious male student, seemingly unfazed by the tension, stares at his phone while playfully remarking that any day Kiraraji Isu looks cute is a day worth remembering. He adds that he needs to note down just how cute she is today, prompting an annoyed and sharp retort from Kiraraji Isu, who demands that he stop his behavior. Luca keeps up his strange, teasing demeanor, seemingly unfazed by Kiraraji Isu's irritation. As he eats, he makes an absurd remark about how her crunching sounds are superior to anything else, even comparing her to a star performer in a machi orchestra. The sheer randomness of his comment leaves Kiraraji Isu baffled, prompting her to question what on earth he is talking about. The bizarre atmosphere shifts slightly as Luca experiences a sudden, sharp twinge. The close-up captures his reaction, highlighting his distinctive earring as he pauses, his playful mood momentarily broken by the unexpected sensation. The sudden, sharp sensation leaves Luca visibly shaken. His casual, teasing demeanor vanishes, replaced by a look of intense focus and discomfort as he reacts to the unexpected pain. Luca's composure falters as the sharp sensation lingers, his gaze fixed and intense while he processes the sudden discomfort. The intense moment is interrupted as the focus shifts away from the characters, lingering on a bag abandoned on the floor. The scene lingers on Luca, highlighting the back of his head and his distinct earring. The sudden tension from his earlier discomfort seems to have settled into a silent, observant pause. Kiraraji Aisu is quietly eating her lunch when she hears the familiar, rhythmic thumping of someone approaching. She notes internally that this weirdo, her classmate Luca, has been showing up every day lately. Just as she processes this, Luca suddenly calls out her name, causing her to freeze in surprise. Satsuki Yamato leans in with a bright, friendly smile, catching Kiraraji Aisu off guard. He cheerfully compliments her, telling her she looks cute as always, and casually asks if she is enjoying her lunch. Satsuki Yamato stands before Kiraragi Aisu, teasing her with a riddle about the food he has brought along. While Aisu silently wonders why he is so persistent, Satsuki Yamato excitedly pulls out a snack, declaring it with a ta-da, and urging her to start eating so he can hear her crunching. Satsuki Yamato beams with a bright, cheerful laugh as he holds up the strawberry-flavored snack. He makes his intentions clear with a playful remark, linking the cuteness of the snack to Kiraraji Aisu herself, while Kiraraji Aisu internally realizes that his persistent gift-giving is all part of his plan to get her to show her teeth. Kiraraji Aisu eats the snack, feeling self-conscious about her jagged teeth, which she has always considered ugly. Meanwhile, Satsuki Yamato sits nearby, listening to the crunching sounds with pure delight. Aisu, flustered by his strange behavior, calls him dumb, but Satsuki Yamato remains unfazed, happily celebrating the fact that he got to see her teeth again. Kiraraji Aisu struggles with her embarrassment, lashing out at Satsuki Yamato for calling her teeth cute. Yamato remains unfazed and playful, urging her to continue talking and crunching on her snack. As the tension lingers, Yamato calls out to her again, and Aisu responds with a wary, guarded look. Satsuki Yamato looks at Kiraraji Aisu with a bright, sincere smile. He tells her that, just like always, she looks incredibly cute today, leaving Kiraraji Aisu wide-eyed and flustered by his direct compliment. Kiraraji Aisu, visibly flustered and annoyed, snaps at Satsuki Yamato to shut up, calling him a moron while she finishes her snack. Satsuki Yamato, completely undeterred by her harsh words, simply smiles with genuine affection and tells her that he is certain she will be just as incredibly cute tomorrow, leaving her stunned by his unwavering persistence. Satsuki Yamato keeps his bright, carefree smile as Kiraraji Aisu continues to lash out at him, unbothered by her calling him a dumbass. He finds her reaction genuinely funny, showing how comfortable he is with her prickly personality. While Satsuki Yamato remains completely unfazed by her name-calling, Kiraraji Aisu pauses in her frustration. Looking at her own lips, she realizes that despite his annoying behavior, Satsuki Yamato has genuinely made her solitary lunch breaks feel a little less lonely. As the conversation continues on the rooftop, Kiraraji Aisu lets out an exasperated shout, calling Satsuki Yamato dumb. Satsuki Yamato simply laughs off the insult, impressed by the volume of her outburst and finding her reaction endearing as always. As Kiraraji Aisu processes the interaction, she tries to convince herself that Satsuki Yamato is nothing more than just a guy and a classmate, despite the growing warmth between them. The author concludes the volume with a heartfelt message, thanking the audience for their support of the series. Using cute mascot illustrations, they share their personal fondness for the shark teeth theme and express their excitement for the future. The author also gives a special shout-out to their Nanace, and Mikami, promising to continue working hard on the story of Kiraraji Aisu and Satsuki Yamato for the next volume. The atmosphere in the classroom is filled with a strange, musical tension. Kiraraji Aisu sits at her desk, unaware that she is being watched by her classmates, including Rin, Tia, and Nico, who stare at her with curious expressions. Breaking the silence, Rin leans in toward her, gently calling out her name and asking her to say something, leaving Aisu momentarily confused. Kiraraji Aisu finds herself the center of focus in a classroom. As Rin attempts to initiate a conversation, Aisu looks directly at her, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and hesitation, while a speech bubble from her classmate asks if she is feeling good today. In the classroom, Rin and the other girls surround Kiraraji Aisu, teasing her for humming and acting differently than usual. Kiraraji Aisu, caught off guard by their observation, tries to process her own feelings. She looks visibly flustered and confused, ultimately suggesting that she feels tender today, leaving her classmates intrigued by her sudden change in demeanor. The teasing continues in the classroom as Rin playfully corners Kiraraji Aisu, demanding to know the reason behind her unusually cheerful and tender demeanor. Kiraraji Aisu, clearly flustered by the persistent attention, tries to protest, but her classmates remain amused and curious about her sudden change in attitude. Crouched in the hallway, Satsuki Yamato observes the scene unfolding with Kiraraji Aisu. He notes that others are also picking up on her unusual, cheerful behavior. While he feels a strong urge to join in and tease her, he holds back, worried about causing a scene. He finds himself overwhelmed by a strange, happy emotion, questioning if it is some form of fatherly love or something else entirely. Satsuki Yamato remains crouched in the hallway, lost in his own internal monologue about his strange, protective feelings toward Kuraragi Aisu. Suddenly, a Luca named Luca appears beside him. Luca cuts through Yamato's confusion by bluntly asking if he is simply happy to see Kuraragi Aisu happy. The question hits home, causing Yamato to look up in shock as he struggles to process this sudden insight into his own heart. Stunned by the stranger's accurate reading of his emotions, Satsuki Yamato finds himself staring at Luca. Luca, however, looks back with a puzzled expression, clearly not knowing who Yamato is as he asks him to identify himself. The confusion deepens as Luca, seemingly forgetting who Satsuki Yamato is, offers a polite but stiff greeting. Satsuki Yamato, still reeling from the earlier conversation, can only respond with a hesitant, stuttering reply while remaining crouched in the hallway. The narrative transitions into Chapter 9, titled, You and the People Who Know You. A striking close-up of Kuraragi Aisu captures her gaze, accompanied by the poetic sentiment that a gentle affection is beginning to spread, setting the stage for further developments in her relationship with Satsuki Yamato. Satsuki Yamato is left reeling as the mysterious student, Luca, seems to have read his mind regarding his feelings for Kuraragi Aisu. As the school bell rings, Satsuki Yamato frantically tries to get an answer, demanding to know who the stranger is and why he mentioned Kuraragi Aisu's name. Satsuki Yamato reaches out and taps Luca on the shoulder, shouting for him to wait a second. Luca pauses, and the two stand in the hallway as Satsuki Yamato struggles to process the mysterious student's sudden departure. Satsuki Yamato attempts to get more information out of the mysterious Luca, asking him where he usually spends his lunch break. Luca, looking down at him with a composed expression, starts to answer the question, mentioning that he is with someone. Satsuki Yamato stands in the hallway, his mind racing as Luca refuses to disclose where he spends his lunch break. Satsuki Yamato is struck by the realization that Luca refers to Kuraragi Aisu by her first name, yet he still has no idea how they are connected. Panicked, Satsuki Yamato catches himself just before blurting out the truth about his private time with Kuraragi Aisu on the school roof, relieved that he managed to keep his composure. Luca dismisses the conversation with a curt, "Okay, Van," and walks away, leaving Satsuki Yamato standing in the hallway, completely bewildered. As the sound of footsteps fades, Satsuki Yamato is left to ponder the encounter, still having no clue who the mysterious student really is. He eventually returns to his desk, but his mind remains fixated on the stranger as he grips his pen, unable to shake off the unsettling interaction. Satsuki Yamato sits at his desk, his mind racing with doubts. He reflects on how Kuraragi Aisu usually keeps her distance from others, yet Luca seemed familiar enough to call her by her first name. As he glances toward her, he feels a pang of uncertainty, questioning if he really knows her as well as he thought, and if their progress toward becoming closer is as significant as he had hoped. Satsuki Yamato reflects on the nature of his bond with Kuraragi Aisu. He realizes that her constant use of a mask has always been a barrier, and he recalls how their current lunch routine began quite unexpectedly when he first intruded upon her solitary time on the school roof. The school bell rings, signaling the end of the period. Satsuki Yamato, still preoccupied with his lingering questions about Kuraragi Aisu and her connection to the mysterious student, decides it is time to talk to her. He glances over to see Kuraragi Aisu sitting at her desk, quietly tapping away on her phone. The school bell has rung, and Satsuki Yamato's mind shifts from his confusing encounter with Luca to his upcoming routine. He makes his way to the rooftop, ready to put his worries aside and enjoy lunch with Kuraragi Aisu as he calls out to her. Satsuki Yamato reaches the rooftop to meet Kuraragi Aisu for their lunch break. As he sees her without her mask, he is completely captivated by her appearance, unable to hold back his genuine admiration for her shark-like teeth. Satsuki Yamato sits on the rooftop bench, confidently confirming to Kuraragi Aisu that he remembered to bring food for their lunch break. Kuraragi Aisu sits nearby, looking at him as she grips her bag, clearly relieved by his response. While enjoying their lunch on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato curiously asks Kuraragi Aisu if she still keeps her mask on when she is around Mamiya and the rest of their classmates. Kuraragi Aisu, busy eating, pauses to reflect on her long-standing habit, eventually responding that it feels too late for her to stop wearing it now. As they continue their lunch on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato suddenly strikes an energetic pose, calling it the lively pose. Kuraragi Aisu watches him with amusement, questioning his strange behavior. Satsuki Yamato persists, telling her that she has become more lively lately and that it would be perfectly fine for her to embrace this new, more open version of herself. Satsuki Yamato strikes an energetic pose, raising both hands to show Kuraragi Aisu how she can interact with her friends. He beams at her, reassuring her that she will be just fine if she decides to change her habits and show her true self to those around her. Satsuki Yamato holds up an onigiri, looking surprised yet pleased as he acknowledges Kuraragi Aisu's agreement. He remains fully engaged in their conversation, reinforcing his supportive stance as he continues to encourage her to be more open. Hiroragi Iso looks at Satsuki Yamato and shares a heartfelt realization, telling him that she is no longer as scared as she once was. She asks him to be there with her if she decides to show her true self to their classmates, admitting that his presence would give her the confidence she needs. Satsuki Yamato, caught mid-bite while eating, reacts with genuine surprise and emotion at her words. Hiroragi Isu looks directly at Satsuki Yamato, her eyes wide and filled with emotion. A soft blush spreads across her cheeks, reflecting the vulnerability and newfound courage she feels while relying on his support. Satsuki Yamato enthusiastically promises to be by Kiraraji Isu's side when she finally decides to take off her mask. As they sit together on the rooftop, Yamato reflects on how far she has come, marveling at the fact that she is now considering revealing her true self to her friends, a prospect she previously thought impossible. Kiraraji Isu reacts with surprise and confusion to Satsuki Yamato's sudden emotional outburst. Satsuki Yamato, feeling a twinge of sentimentality, smiles warmly and tells her that he is simply happy because she is happy, leaving Kiraraji Isu stunned by his heartfelt admission. The conversation on the rooftop takes an unexpected turn. Kiraraji Isu suddenly freezes, her eyes widening as she stares at something positioned behind Satsuki Yamato. Sensing her shift in demeanor, Satsuki Yamato turns to her with a look of concern, asking what has caught her attention. Startled by Kiraraji Isu's reaction, Satsuki Yamato turns around to discover a Luca, standing quietly on the rooftop. The sudden appearance of the stranger creates an unexpected tension in the air as Satsuki Yamato looks up at him. The peaceful conversation between Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Isu is abruptly shattered. As Satsuki Yamato turns around, his expression shifts to one of pure shock and confusion upon finding the mysterious Luca standing right behind him, completely unannounced. The atmosphere on the rooftop shifts instantly as Luca appears. Satsuki Yamato is visibly tense, his nerves fraying at the sudden intrusion. Meanwhile, Kiraraji Isu stands frozen, caught in a moment of vulnerability. Luca looks on with a calm, knowing expression, breaking the silence by remarking on how Isu has chosen to remove her mask specifically in front of Yamato. Luca remains on the rooftop, his presence casting a shadow over the conversation between Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Isu. Isu looks visibly unsettled by his sudden appearance and pointed remarks, while Satsuki Yamato stands by, caught in the awkward and tense atmosphere created by the mysterious student. Luca confronts Satsuki Yamato on the rooftop, his expression sharp and demanding. He explains that he simply asked around to track Satsuki Yamato down. As he steps closer, he aggressively questions Satsuki Yamato about why he is on a first-name basis with Kiraraji Isu, ordering him to stay put while he continues his interrogation. Luca remains unfazed by the tension, casually asking if they are talking about Kiraraji Isu's teeth. Satsuki Yamato, caught in a state of alarm, urgently whispers to Kiraraji Isu to put her mask back on so that Luca does not see her secret. Kiraraji Isu, caught off guard and feeling vulnerable, begins to respond as the situation grows increasingly awkward. Luca stands on the rooftop, his expression unbothered as he tells Satsuki Yamato that he already knows about Kiraraji Isu's secret, effectively silencing the panic. The rooftop atmosphere turns heavy with confusion. Satsuki Yamato stands frozen, his mind racing as he questions how Luca could be aware of Kiraraji Isu's secret. While Kiraraji Isu watches on, Satsuki Yamato stammers in disbelief, unable to comprehend the sudden revelation, while Luca remains composed, watching the pair with an unsettling air of certainty. As Satsuki Yamato struggles to comprehend how Luca knows about Kiraraji Isu's secret, Luca calmly drops a bombshell, revealing that Kiraraji Isu is actually his cousin. The revelation hits Satsuki Yamato hard. As he processes the news that Luca is actually Kiraraji Isu's cousin, his shock is palpable. He begins to connect the dots, realizing that this family connection is the reason Luca knows about her shark-like teeth, leaving him in a state of complete disbelief. Satsuki Yamato struggles to keep his composure as the pieces fall into place. He asks Luca if being her cousin means he has known Kiraraji Isu since they were children, his internal monologue betraying his lingering shock and anxiety over the situation. On the school rooftop, Satsuki Yamato asks Luca if he truly knew Kiraraji Isu before she started hiding her face behind a mask. Luca calmly confirms that he did. As Satsuki Yamato processes this, he thinks about how he never expected anyone to get so angry on her behalf, realizing that Luca's actions were taken for her sake. Satsuki Yamato turns his attention back to Luca, confirming his first name is South. He then probes deeper into the mystery, asking Luca if he truly understands the underlying reason why Kiraraji Isu feels the need to wear her mask. As Satsuki Yamato presses for the truth, Luca admits that Kiraraji Isu started wearing her mask because she was being mocked by others. His hand clenches tightly, betraying his inner tension and the lingering pain of those past events. On the school rooftop, Satsuki Yamato loses his composure, demanding to know why Luca stood by and did nothing while Kiraraji Aisu suffered. His frustration boils over as he questions Luca's inaction. The scene shifts to a painful memory of Kiraraji Aisu, showing the exact moment when the bullying became so severe that she felt forced to hide her face behind a mask in public. Satsuki Yamato is visibly agitated, his voice trembling with anger as he confronts Luca. He struggles to articulate his frustration, emphasizing that if Luca had only stepped in to help Kiraraji Aisu back then, things might have turned out differently for her. Satsuki Yamato stands visibly distressed, lamenting the life Kiraraji Aisu could have had if she hadn't been forced to hide behind a mask. Luca remains detached, cutting through the tension by telling Satsuki Yamato that it is okay, coldly asserting that because Kiraraji Aisu never explicitly asked for help, he felt no obligation to intervene. Luca maintains his detached and cold demeanor, looking down at Satsuki Yamato with a dismissive expression. He questions the necessity of his intervention, leaving Satsuki Yamato to grapple with the realization that Luca views the entire situation as nothing more than an encounter with another peculiar person. Satsuki Yamato stares at Luca in utter disbelief, his expression a mix of shock and anger. He cannot fathom the coldness in Luca's words, and he blurts out a desperate question, unable to process the indifference shown by the mysterious student regarding Kiraraji Aisu's traumatic history. The tension on the rooftop reaches a breaking point. As Luca dismissively claims he is only stating facts, Satsuki Yamato loses his composure. He shouts back at Luca, vehemently arguing that helping someone who is suffering is a fundamental human instinct that shouldn't require an invitation. Satsuki Yamato stands tense and furious, his body language radiating anger. Kiraraji Aisu stands beside him, gently tugging at his sleeve in an attempt to get his attention and de-escalate the situation. Meanwhile, Luca looks on with a cold, detached expression, bluntly telling Satsuki Yamato to get real about the facts, showing no empathy for the emotional weight of the argument. Satsuki Yamato stares at Luca in disbelief, his frustration boiling over as he challenges the other boy's detached logic. As he watches Luca stand there, seemingly unbothered and deep in thought, Satsuki Yamato begins to question the reality of their interaction. He realizes with a sinking feeling that his own moral compass and understanding of human decency might be entirely different from Luca's, leaving him to wonder if they are even speaking the same language. Satsuki Yamato, desperate to break through Luca's cold indifference, poses a hypothetical scenario. If Kiraraji Aisu had asked for help, would he have acted? Luca, looking unbothered, finally shifts his focus and replies with chilling simplicity that he would have helped her with everything he had, leaving Satsuki Yamato stunned by the casual nature of his response. Satsuki Yamato stares in bewilderment, his expression a mix of shock and confusion. He tries to make sense of the claim that Luca's cold demeanor isn't intentional rudeness, but rather a result of him being divergent, leaving Satsuki Yamato struggling to reconcile this new perspective with his own frustration. Satsuki Yamato, feeling flustered and guilty for his earlier shouting, tries to compose himself while standing beside Kiraraji Aisu. As he processes the situation, he realizes that Luca isn't necessarily trying to be rude. Luca, unfazed by the tension, calmly admits that he is often labeled as cold or strange by others, and he turns the question back to Yamato, asking if he shares that same opinion. Luca continues to speak, his voice cutting through the tension as he addresses Satsuki Yamato directly. He tries to articulate his feelings about being labeled as weird, attempting to make Satsuki Yamato understand the reality of his situation. Satsuki Yamato suddenly shouts, "No way, man," in response to Luca's claims about being strange. Flustered by his own volume, Satsuki Yamato quickly apologizes to Luca for raising his voice again. Kiraraji Aisu stands by as Luca nonchalantly brushes off the apology, telling him it is fine, while Satsuki Yamato insists that Luca should not call himself weird because it is sad and simply wrong. Satsuki Yamato looks at Luca, insisting that being helpful is a positive trait rather than a sign of being cold or strange. He takes a moment to sincerely apologize to Luca for his earlier heated remarks about what constitutes normal behavior. Kiraraji Aisu looks on with a contemplative expression. She chimes in, suggesting that everyone has their own version of normal, which is perfectly acceptable, unless that normal involves something truly harmful. She then curiously asks what exactly is considered bad in this context. Kiraraji Aisu continues the conversation by pointing out that while everyone has their own version of normal, illegal actions are clearly wrong. Satsuki Yamato enthusiastically agrees with her, using her point to validate his own argument that Luca is not a cold or weird person, leaving Luca to respond with a simple, curious acknowledgement. As the conversation continues, Luca processes Satsuki Yamato's reassurance. He looks visibly taken aback, his eyes widening as he realizes the weight of the interaction. He mutters in disbelief that no one has ever treated him like a friend before, while Kiraraji Aisu watches the exchange unfold. Kiraraji Aisu fidgets with her hands, her expression showing a mix of surprise and bashfulness as the realization of her friendship with Satsuki Yamato is brought into the light. Luca's expression softens completely as he processes the kindness shown to him. With a gentle, genuine smile, he expresses his gratitude, clearly moved by the unexpected warmth from Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu stand frozen in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief at Luca's sudden change in demeanor. As the atmosphere turns tense with their confusion, Luca looks back at them, calmly wondering what has caused their startled reaction. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu stand in disbelief, completely caught off guard by Luca's sudden display of emotion. Satsuki Yamato expresses his shock, noting that he has never seen Luca smile before and questioning their relationship, while Luca remains composed, simply explaining that it is normal to smile when receiving a kind gesture. On the school rooftop, Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu remain visibly flustered by Luca's sudden display of emotion. Satsuki Yamato questions the rarity of Luca smiling, while Kiraraji Aisu tries to process the situation. Luca remains composed and turns the observation back on them, calmly noting that Kiraraji Aisu smiles as well, leaving the pair momentarily taken aback by his directness. The conversation takes an unexpected turn as Luca points out that Kiraraji Aisu smiles when she is around Satsuki Yamato without her mask. The comment hits Kiraraji Aisu like a shockwave, causing her to lose her composure entirely. She erupts in a panicked, flustered denial, shouting and waving her hands in embarrassment, while Satsuki Yamato stands nearby, stunned by her sudden and intense outburst. Luca playfully insists that he saw Kiraraji Aisu smiling back in the alley, much to her intense embarrassment. As Satsuki Yamato realizes that Luca's presence is actually centered around his own curiosity about him rather than Kiraraji Aisu, the situation becomes clear, leaving the pair stunned by the revelation. Luca continues to press the issue, suggesting that Kiraraji Aisu must have been genuinely happy when she was seen without her mask. Kiraraji Aisu is caught completely off guard, stammering in a state of panic while Satsuki Yamato looks on, observing the intense interaction. Luca keeps the conversation going, playfully questioning Kiraraji Aisu while praising her for her recent display of courage. He turns to Satsuki Yamato, excitedly recounting how Kiraraji Aisu stood up to the person who had been bothering her. Kiraraji Aisu stares back, visibly surprised and flustered by Luca's bold and direct compliments regarding her personal growth. Luca maintains his calm, teasing demeanor as he turns his attention towards Satsuki Yamato. He admits that despite their interaction, he never actually learned the boy's name. Satsuki Yamato, caught off guard but cooperative, introduces himself by comparing his name to a battleship, while Kiraraji Aisu watches the exchange unfold. Luca continues to analyze the situation, asking Satsuki Yamato if he agrees that Kiraraji Aisu's smile was a natural result of her personal growth. Satsuki Yamato responds calmly, suggesting that Luca can simply call him Satsuki instead of his surname, maintaining the relaxed atmosphere of their conversation. The tension on the rooftop escalates as Luca continues to press his point, leaving Kiraraji Aisu visibly shaken and struggling to find words, her shark-like teeth bared in shock. Satsuki Yamato, looking on with a mix of confusion and realization, wonders if he has completely misunderstood Kiraraji Aisu's true feelings all along. As Luca persists with his probing questions about why she was smiling, Satsuki Yamato can only react with bewilderment at the sudden turn in their conversation. On the school rooftop, Satsuki Yamato looks at the others with a puzzled expression, asking what is going on. Beside him, Kiraraji Aisu is visibly flustered, her face hidden behind her hands as she stammers, struggling to compose herself while repeating Satsuki Yamato's name. Luca takes a moment to properly introduce himself to Satsuki Yamato, noting that his name, So, is written with the kanji for refreshing. Satsuki Yamato acknowledges the introduction, and the two exchange a polite greeting as their conversation continues on the rooftop. Luca offers a warm, genuine smile as he repeats his name, So, ensuring Satsuki Yamato catches it clearly during their introduction. The scene shifts to a revelation about the mysterious student. It turns out that the boy with the refreshing smile, who Satsuki Yamato now considers his first high school friend, is actually Kisaragi So, Kiraraji Aisu's cousin. Far from being weird or strange, he is someone who brings a new, refreshing dynamic to their lives. The scene shifts to the school rooftop where Kiraraji Aisu and Satsuki Yamato are settling in for their routine lunch. However, the atmosphere is different today because Kisaragi So has joined them. Kiraraji Aisu looks on with a quiet expression, while Satsuki Yamato, feeling the change in their usual dynamic, asks Kisaragi So why he is there again. As Kiraraji Aisu peeks from the side, clearly flustered, Kisaragi So casually explains that he joined them because he finds Satsuki Yamato's presence comfortable. The unexpected confession leaves Satsuki Yamato speechless, while Kiraraji Aisu struggles to process the sudden turn in their lunch conversation. The rooftop lunch gathering takes an unexpected turn when Mamiya Shizuku arrives, greeting the group with a cheerful smile. Satsuki Yamato, surprised by her sudden appearance, asks why she is there, while Mamiya Shizuku begins to explain the reason for her visit to the group. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu move forward, one step at a time, as they navigate the school stairs. Their journey continues with steady progress, capturing a light-hearted moment between the two as they head into the next chapter of their story. The scene shifts to a flashback in the classroom. Kiraraji Aisu is seen leaving for lunch as usual, followed shortly by Satsuki Yamato. However, the routine is disrupted when a looker appears, asking about Satsuki Yamato's whereabouts before deciding to follow him. Meanwhile, Nico seems lost in her own thoughts, failing to notice the confusion unfolding around her as Kiraraji Aisu wonders about the implications of this unexpected pursuit. Nico suddenly rushes out of the classroom, exclaiming that she needs to take care of something because the situation feels wrong. Meanwhile, Satsuki Yamato and Luca talk about the potential awkwardness of the scenario, with Nico expressing her genuine worry for Kiraraji Aisu's well-being while Satsuki Yamato acknowledges her concern. On the school rooftop, Satsuki Yamato sits alongside Kisaragi South. As they interact with the mysterious student, Luca, Satsuki Yamato clarifies that Kisaragi, is his younger cousin. The atmosphere remains casual as they exchange introductions and discuss their connection. On the rooftop, Kisaragi defends his need for a proper introduction while Rin observes the group with a curious gaze. Satsuki Yamato then turns his focus to Kiraraji Aisu, calling her name to get her attention as the conversation shifts. The atmosphere on the rooftop shifts as Kiraraji Aisu stares intensely, clearly taken aback by the realization that Satsuki Yamato has been sharing his lunchtime with others. Satsuki Yamato looks on, appearing slightly confused by the sudden tension in the air. The tension on the rooftop reaches a breaking point. Satsuki Yamato and Kiraraji Aisu exchange nervous, panicked glances as the reality of their secret lunch meetings threatens to be exposed. Satsuki Yamato spirals into a frantic internal monologue, worrying that the truth will inevitably come out, while Kiraraji Aisu's wide-eyed, distressed expression perfectly captures the chaos of the moment. Nico smiles warmly at Kiraraji Aisu, trying to ease her friend's obvious distress. She tells Kiraraji Aisu not to worry and encourages her to finally open up to Mamiya, insisting that now is the perfect chance to clear the air. With the tension mounting on the rooftop, Kiraraji Aisu gathers her courage to address Nico. She tentatively calls out to her, and as Nico responds, Aisu begins to reveal the truth she has been keeping hidden. Just as Kiraraji Aisu begins to confess her situation to Nico, she is overcome with sudden surprise. Her composure breaks, and in her flustered state, she inadvertently reveals her sharp, shark-like teeth, leaving her momentarily stunned and speechless. The tension of the moment shatters as Nico realizes the reason behind Kiraraji Aisu's social withdrawal. Instead of reacting with judgment, Nico enthusiastically points out that Aisu's shark-like teeth are actually adorable, leaving Aisu completely stunned by this unexpected and warm acceptance. Nico is completely won over by Kiraraji Aisu's appearance, showering her with enthusiastic compliments. She points out how the combination of Aisu's sharp, shark-like teeth and her large, droopy eyes creates a charming contrast that she finds absolutely adorable. Nico and Satsuki Yamato stand together, feeling relieved that the secret is out and well received. Nico turns to Kiraraji Aisu, who is sitting on the bench, and lightheartedly asks to get a better look at her face now that the tension has finally broken. Satsuki Yamato excitedly presses Kiraraji Aisu, telling her that she can now enjoy lunch with Nico. Aisu, feeling a bit overwhelmed and shy, stammers in response, while Nico turns to her with a friendly, curious expression to ask if she is truly okay with the arrangement. Nico happily confirms that she would love to have lunch with Kiraraji Aisu, exclaiming how nice it is. Meanwhile, Satsuki Yamato finds himself flustered and confused, wondering why Aisu is suddenly giving him such a sharp, intense look. Satsuki Yamato notices Kiraraji Aisu's persistent, piercing gaze and tries to ask her what is wrong. Aisu, however, deflects his concern with a vague response, maintaining her mysterious and slightly prickly demeanor while continuing to stare at him. The focus shifts to a close-up of Kiraraji Aisu. A speech bubble hangs in the air, suggesting she is internally processing the new social dynamic, specifically the prospect of having lunch with her classmates. The atmosphere on the rooftop shifts instantly as Kiraraji Aisu lets out a sudden, loud cry, startling both Satsuki Yamato and Nico. Yamato, caught off guard, asks what happened while Aisu struggles to regain her composure. She quickly apologizes, muttering the name, which leaves Nico and Yamato confused as they try to understand the source of her sudden distress. Satsuki Yamato turns away with a sharp, cold expression. He firmly commands someone to be quiet, warning them not to bring up things that don't need to be said, while looking visibly bothered by the sudden turn in the conversation. Satsuki Yamato leans in, his expression softening as he tells Kiraraji Aisu that she shouldn't feel pressure to eat with him if she doesn't want to. Taken aback, Aisu stammers in a panic, insisting that she truly wants to be there. In the background, the rest of the group watches on, with Satsuki Yamato gently prompting Aisu to embrace the opportunity to spend time with Nico and her other friends. The scene shifts to a fragmented memory or narrative reflection. A woman with a gentle smile speaks about a past connection involving Satsuki Yamato, who is shown in a small, crouching posture as if listening intently. Beside them, a mysterious, unknown watches the interaction, adding a layer of tension to the revelation. Satsuki Yamato looks visibly startled, his eyes wide as he reacts to Kiraraji Aisu's slip of the tongue. Aisu, appearing embarrassed and flustered, quickly tries to dismiss her previous statement. Yamato, confused by her mention of our, leans in and asks her to clarify what she meant, leaving the atmosphere tense and curious. As the tension on the rooftop rises, Satsuki Yamato looks directly at Kiraraji Aisu, his expression serious as he begins to voice a realization. Aisu, clearly overwhelmed and trembling, can only stare back with wide, watery eyes, her hand twitching nervously as she braces herself for what he is about to ask. Nico desperately tries to intervene and silence the conversation, but Satsuki Yamato is already deep in thought, wondering if Kiraraji Aisu's cryptic words about Kisaragi and Mai imply a deeper connection. Kiraraji Aisu, clearly flustered, tries to shift the focus by noting that the rooftop is not their personal property. Yamato, trying to maintain his composure, reminds her that they are still at school. Satsuki Yamato remains on the school rooftop, his posture tense and his expression one of pure shock. He lets out a bewildered sound, completely thrown off by the cryptic turn the conversation has taken. The atmosphere on the rooftop remains thick with misunderstanding. Kiraraji Aisu, looking perplexed, asks Satsuki Yamato what he is even talking about, causing him to react with a blank, confused expression. The rooftop atmosphere remains thick with tension as Nico steps in, desperately trying to silence the conversation and redirect the focus. She loudly proclaims that the rooftop is a public space for everyone to eat, effectively cutting off the previous line of questioning. Satsuki Yamato, still crouching and looking completely lost, watches the scene unfold, unable to grasp the true meaning behind the girl's cryptic remarks. As the tension on the rooftop reaches a peak, Kiraraji Aisu turns her attention to Nico. With a calm and firm expression, she tells Nico that it is fine and instructs her to stop talking, effectively cutting off the chaotic intervention. With the tension momentarily diffused, Kiraragi Aisu rests her hands against her face, flashing a confident, shark-toothed grin. She looks directly at the others, pointedly asking, "Got it?" to ensure her previous instruction is clearly understood. Satsuki Yamato gazes at Kiraraji Aisu, his expression filled with genuine worry as he asks if she is really okay with the current situation of having everyone eating on the rooftop together. Kiraraji Aisu looks at Satsuki Yamato, her expression calm as she admits that, honestly, his ability to enjoy lunch with his friends is what matters most to her. Satsuki Yamato listens intently, offering a soft, affirmative response as the conversation continues on the rooftop. Kiraraji Aisu looks on with a soft, contemplative expression, admitting that she truly cherished their time alone together. She confesses that having Satsuki Yamato all to herself felt special, yet she remains firm in her belief that it is better for him to spend time with his friends, noting that seeing him become more social is exactly what she had hoped for. Satsuki Yamato leans in, telling Kiraraji Aisu that he wants to see all the different sides of her, encouraging her to open up completely. Kiraraji Aisu looks back at him, her eyes glistening with emotion as she silently asks for his confirmation, ready to embrace this new level of vulnerability between them. Touched by Satsuki Yamato's sincere request to see every side of her, Kiraraji Aisu stands quietly, her expression softening as she feels truly accepted for the first time. Satsuki Yamato chats with a male classmate on the school rooftop. As they talk, the classmate teases Satsuki Yamato about being a good guy despite his perceived lack of intelligence. Satsuki Yamato laughs off the comment, appreciating the friendly exchange as he continues to integrate into his social circle. As the group hangs out on the rooftop, the atmosphere remains casual and friendly. Nico jokes about her back popping, prompting a playful jab from the others about her feeling like an old person. Amidst the laughter, Nico checks in on Kiraraji Aisu, who smiles and gently confirms that she is perfectly happy with how things are going in her life right now. While hanging out on the rooftop, Satsuki Yamato suddenly tells Kiraraji Aisu that she looks especially cute today. The unexpected compliment catches Aisu completely off guard, leaving her blushing intensely and spiraling into a panicked, internal monologue as she struggles to process the comment in front of Rin and Sion. Kiraraji Aisu, still reeling from the unexpected praise, asks Satsuki Yamato what he meant by his comment. Satsuki Yamato casually explains that he made a promise to tell her she is cute every single day, leaving her even more embarrassed while Rin looks on. Rin is left confused by Satsuki Yamato's bold declaration, asking Kiraragi Aisu for clarification about the promise. Nico quickly intervenes, telling her to stop asking questions. Kiraraji Aisu agrees, and the group decides to move on and enjoy their lunch together. The conversation about Satsuki Yamado's promise concludes, and the group settles in for lunch. The scene lingers on a school bag left on the rooftop bench, accompanied by the closing remark that the more people there are, the merrier the gathering becomes.